Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel Learn to Code with Noob. Today in this section of the video I will go through two categories of hook. Not actually categories but two types of hooks. One is useState and one is useEffect. I will also go through what is the difference between useState as a hook used in a functional component and a set state as a method used in a class component, and how we can use effect. There are other explanations which I will give for use effect in my future upcoming videos, so keep watching. Alright, so moving forward with the useState hook, I have also learned some other minor things related to TypeScript too in this useState thing. Um, so if you see in this useState, it actually returns an array, and the first is of type number. It's a number, and the second is of type dispatch, and type of dispatch, and a generic type of set state action number. Now when we see this thing, in which basically we are extracting a variable and a function in an array, this is called array destructuring in TypeScript. You can read all about it, but basically it is to destructure the array. So what I actually mean by that is, so when you use useState 0, right, you could do like a number, like you can just say number state array, right, and you can say your count is number state array of 0, and here function set count is equal to number state array of 1, right, and then this is how it will work. So there is no difference at all in this, and you will see in the code, like this code works as it is, right? So so this is what I am calling it, array destructuring. It is pretty nice to have, so you don't have to write, like you don't have to extract the variables and functions like this. You can easily extract it by this. So the first one will be a count variable, and the next can be a function. So minor thing for the use state hook. Now moving on to the other aspect of state hook, which is to use multiple state variables. So what I mean by that is, so you can use multiple state variables in order to present multiple states. So for example, if I add one more text UI, right, and I basically say that okay, this text UI is is a message, right. Now this message will display some random message and a count with that, right? So for that I can basically make a new useState hook variable which initializes with an empty message, right, and what it returns in the destructuring of an array is a message and set message function. So whenever we press on this view, we basically do a new message, and what that message does is it says okay, this is a new message, and it also has a count value inserted in it. Let's say we want to do that, right? And over here we will just display the message value. Okay, so can do this. All right, and I will just add a style to this. So we haven't covered the styles yet. It basically means I'm just increasing the font size of it just to make it more visible. You don't have to bother about the style thing right now. Okay, so after this, so what I have done is I have made a new state variable message, right? And this message variable is representing a completely different state UI, right? So this can be anything else too, right? So now if I do this, so if I'm clicking on this message, so here it is changing with the count, and here it is changing with that set message, right? So there is so there are like multiple ways to achieve this, right? You can, like, nobody is saying you can have all in one state. So you can do, like, for example, you have count, right? And then you have a message object. So you can have like a I can just say it as view state, and here I can just say set view state, right? So what I did is I basically combined both count and message into one object, right? And over here what I will do is I will just say, okay, whatever my view state dot count is, over here I will do the same thing, right? View state dot count, view state dot count. So you can do in this way too, right? And instead of doing set count and set message, you can basically do set view state combined as a whole, and you can say count as a count, sorry, view state dot count plus 1 message, it can be anything, new message, state dot whatever the count is, right? So I mean, so I can do it in this way too. I can basically merge a state into one giant state, and then I can do this. But so here is a little bit difference in doing this is, so if you do, like, if you merge this state, right? And I will just show you how it affects. So you can see, so whatever the view state was updating to whatever the count is already, right? And everything works same. The only thing is, so for example, there might be a scenario in which when you want to press a button, you don't want to change the value of view state, right? So what you want to do is you don't want to change a value of view state, and potentially you want to, and you don't want to reflect it over here to, like one thing you can do is you can just say, okay, when I press this button, right, my view state value will not change, but my message value will change to this, right? So you can do that. So over here, whatever my view state count value will be, that will be the same, right? So let's just do this. So see, my view state value didn't changed, right? So view state dot count was 0 and now it is 1. So every time I'm pressing it, it will always be 1, so it will remain the same, right? um, so there might be a chance, so in which, or there might be a case in which you only want to update a message value and you don't want to update the count value. So in that case, what you have to do is like you have to like basically copy the array, like whatever it was before. So you have to do like this and then message, right? Because uh, one exception with this set view state is it basically rewrites the whole view state. Like it doesn't remember the previous thing. So whenever you do set view state, right, it rewrites the whole thing. So if I'll do um, this, now this is preserving, okay, whatever my view state value was, and then you do this. So now the problem with that is, so for example, if you want to only change the message state in other areas of the code, you have to, every time you have to do this, right? Which is not a big deal, but if you have, so for example, if you have a count message, suppose you have like 3 different other states, now you have to do this again, like dot 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 view state, right? And then you do this, so which is a bit dirty. So that's why according to like Facebook, they think the best practice is to not do this, like do not combine everything in one. You could do if there are like very less states, but if there are more states, it is advisable to basically break these things down to multiple use state variables. So and um, so with the multiple use state variables, so for example, I'll just undo this whole thing. All right, so with the multiple use state thing, like whenever the render happens, it happens in an order. So for example, when you do set count, um, the rendering will go from all the way from top to bottom, right? So one by one the render happens. So this is like one thing to keep in mind, like use state will be called over here and then here, and then it will automatically be rendered over here. Now the other thing, which is, so if you are using a combined set state, um, I have told you that you have to like copy the previous state, right? And the reason was, we are every time we are rewriting the whole thing. But in the class, but in the class component, when we did the set state, it doesn't happen like that. So in this set state, we don't completely rewrite the whole state. We just update, we merge. That state is getting merged, as compared to over here the state doesn't get merged. So that is also one of the other difference of the use state hook. Alright, so moving on to our next hook, which is useEffect. So useEffect is used to run the side effects. So what I mean by that is, So if you look at our class component example, which I have already shown in the previous video, so there's a constructor, right? You set the state, and usually the life cycle which runs is constructor, and you say component did mount, right? But before this it runs through render, so the render happens and component did mount happens, right? So if you want to run a side effect after the component is actually mounted, or in React way, if the DOM is already updated, you can run side effects like right over here. And this can also happen if you want to change a state. So for example, I'm changing a state over here, right? And then render happens and component did update is triggered. So if you want to run a side effect after the component is updated, then you can do that in this method right over here, right? But this is with the class components. So how you can do the same thing with the functional component? So you can actually use useEffect method. So so whatever is inside the useEffect method, it will be called after the render, the functional component has done the rendering part, right? So whenever this whole render has happened, so I will just show you how it looks like on the logs. So I'll just display these logs over here. I will have a simulator open over here. We'll just do this. Now if you see, this functional, so rendering is triggered, right? And the functional component inner renders, right? And then after component did mount, and then view is rendered, right? So view rendered is called all the way at the very end, which you can see in the code. The view rendered is called at the very end, right? I think this, the logs of the class component might be more confusing. I'll just comment these logs so that it is more clear. Okay, so I will do another. Okay, so now you can see the exact method. So functional component inner renders, which means the rendering happens, the code inside this return happens. Oh sorry, not this one. This function component return happens, and after this rendering happens, the view rendered is getting called. So you can run the side effects inside the useEffect hook. And also the side effects can be anything, right? It can be like an API call, or it can be a subscription to any network source. So it can be anything, or you want to change any value, like you want to set the state of this count after the rendering happens. So it can be anything like that. I will also discuss more related to the useEffect, like how you can clean up the side effects. So for example, if you have a side effect which is based on a subscription and you want to unsubscribe, right, after the unmounting of the component happens, how you can do that with the useEffect method. So yeah, so this is a very easy way to do it, right? But if you see, like from the class component perspective, so if you want to do the same thing in the class component, you have to write the code over here, like after component did mount and after component did update, right? You have to write the code over here. And there might be a case in which in both component did update and component did mount, like the methods are the same, like you are doing the same thing after component did mount and after component did update, uh, which is kind of you are repeating the code, but the functional component gives you an easy way with the useEffect hook to do that, right? You just write it once and it will be triggered after the component is updated or if the component is mounted, right? So this example which you saw over here, it was after the component is mounted. And oh, all right, I will just remove these logs again. These logs are getting called again, right? I have removed it, so now I'll just do a refresh. All right, so yeah, so these were like after the functional component renders and the mount happens, so the view is rendered again, right? So what if I set a state, like by just clicking over here, I just set a state, and after that what happens, functional renders and component did update happens and the view rendered is again getting called. Yeah, so this is how you can use useEffect. I will add more details as I learn more about the useEffect in the coming sections. All right, in this section, we will be going a bit more deeper into useEffect. So I will be sharing more learnings in the useEffect thing. So in the previous section, I explained how we can use useEffect, and um, if we want to do any, if we want to apply any effects or side effects um, after the render has been completed, or you can say after the component has been mounted or component has been updated. If we want to apply any effects after that, we can use useEffect. So now the other interesting thing about useEffect is, so if you notice, we are actually using useEffect inside a functional component, and that is the only place you can use useEffect. You, I'm pretty sure you can't use hooks inside class components. So um, okay, so we are using useEffect inside a functional component, and you also notice that we pass in a function as an effect, right? So inside this useEffect, if you see the useEffect, it has an effect callback which we are passing. It also accepts dependencies, which we will discuss later in the sections, in the other sections of the video. But if you just focus on the function which we are passing, so this is the function which is basically an inner function which we are passing, and the good thing about that inner function is, I mean, you can uh, easily access the value of count. So if you want to like access the value of count over here, right, you should be able to easily access it. So for example, if I want to print the value of count, I can use count, right? So I can easily access it. So this is again, this is how JavaScript works, and this is like a best case scenario of JavaScript closures, right? And the other thing is, I actually came to know, like, whenever the useEffect calls this function will be new every time. So it means uh, it will be a new function every time whenever we are rendering. So if we render, right, so for example, if you do set count and you render, so this will be a new function will be created for this. And if you know how useEffect works is, so for example, when render happens, the initial render happens, the use effect is being remembered by the React component. So the use effect is being remembered by this functional component, and after the whole render happens, this effect is applied. So if you do set count, this functional component will get rendered again, and this use effect inner function will be a new function, which means you will not run into the scenario in which this function is getting a stale value of the count. So it will always be a new value of the count, which is really good. And I will explain more in detail like why these things are good as I'm reading through the documentation. So the other thing which is pretty nice is the use effect. Like this function will be called in a scheduled manner, so it will not be a synchronous thing. So what that means is after this rendering, right, this thing is scheduled, which means it doesn't like blocks your app while this effect is running, right? So these effects are scheduled, which in the React world, if you are simply going through the web app, it basically doesn't block the browser, and I believe it basically doesn't block like your app screen when this effect is getting when this effect is applied. So this is also a really good feature about the use effect, whereas if you see in component did mount and component did update, they are not like that. The methods, like whatever things you want to run in component did update and component did mount, they are running synchronously. So yeah, this is what I have learned more about the use effect. I'll be sharing more related to how we like what is the role of these dependencies, like what is that, and how you can actually utilize the cleanup thing. So for example, if you are applying an effect which is basically like you are subscribing to some observer or something and you want to unsubscribe to it, right? You want to clean up. So for that you can also use useEffect. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, please don't forget to click on the like button. If you don't like this video, please mention why in the comment down below. Like, share and subscribe. Keep learning.